Greetings. We are so glad you decided to join us today. Let us go into the sanctuary.
Good day. We are so delighted and honored for you to be with us during the hooding ceremony of Bishop Sir Walter Lee Mack, Jr. He is being awarded the Doctor of Divinity from United Theological Seminary during our September commencement. And won't you join me in celebrating as Dr. Mack comes to be hooded at this time.
Thank you, sir. Thank God for this wonderful, wonderful opportunity in our time together. We give all glory and honor and praise unto God, to Dr. Millard. We thank God for his leadership at this great seminary. Let's give the Lord a hand praise for him. Dr. Millard, we thank you for your very fine leadership for this institution, and we give honor and praise to Dr. Watson. Let's give the Lord a hand praise for him, his very fine leadership. And we want to thank God for the number of years that the Lord has allowed us to be blessed by very fine leadership of Dr. Harold Hudson, who is entering into retirement. Let's give the Lord a hand praise for Dr. Hudson. And then let's thank God for all of the years and the labor that he has given to this program and building this program. We so thank you, and to your lovely wife, to Billy Hudson. We thank God for her, and we give honor and praise for her, and to the one who shall pick up the baton and take it from this point forward. We thank God for Dr. Eldman Sattler, and let's give the Lord a hand praise for him, and thank you for your being here on this day. To Dr. Miller, my co-mentor who mentors the group with me, thank you for your support. And to all of you, my wife is here today. Let's give the Lord a hand praise for her. My wife is here. Thank you for your support during this particular time. And to students, we are so excited about this opportunity and this great challenge that you are facing in this time. I have 3 who are graduating today: Montel Crawford and Henry Thurman and Marco Tenor. You all have done just a great job. But to this entire class, we are so proud of you from United Theological Seminary. And we just owe you a big hand praise. Let's give the Lord a hand praise for this entire class. Listen, this is a very somber moment for me as well. And I want to thank the board of directors and the leadership of this very fine institution for bestowing this great honor. I graduated from United Theological Seminary in 1997. My mentors were Dr. William Augustus Jones and Dr. Harold Carter Sr. And I remember them right now in such a very vivid way. And we thank God for their mentorship and what they bestowed in us. And I want to thank God for them in this very moment. And then I want to thank God for the legacy and the life of Dr. Charles Edward Booth, who inspired so many of us and inspired me in this process and even my work at United Theological Seminary. As a matter of fact, on this very moment, I am preaching at the necktie of Dr. Charles Edward Booth. Upon his passing, his wife blessed me with this necktie of Dr. Booth, and I remember him in such a very special way, as we all do. But I am so thankful for this great honor, a Doctor of Divinity, and for the work that United has recognized. And I want you to know that all of us have a great challenge. There's so many others who could have been selected to receive this honor, and so many others who I know who will receive this honor. But I am so appreciative, and I realize that anything like this that happens is only by the grace of God and by the favor that God gives us to give you kindness and to show kindness and to give you favor in front of men and women. And so I am so appreciative for what you have done in this regard. Listen, I just want to take a few moments and inspire those of you who are graduating on this particular day and on this moment. In Jude, the first chapter, right there, that 24th verse, it says, "Now unto him who's able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy." Now unto him, to the only wise God, our Savior, be glory, majesty, dominion, and power, now henceforth and forevermore. I want to talk about a call for pandemic leadership. And that's what I want to talk about, a call for pandemic leadership. These words lifted from the book of Jude, we often recite during a time in worship. We recite these words at a time that we know as the benediction. The word benediction comes from the Latin word benedictus, and it means to give a good word or blessing as one is sent out. How fitting it is that we use these words to inspire you on this day as we send you out with a blessing from God. My brothers and sisters, make no mistake about it. You're going to need blessings to cover your life because you're graduating in a time when the New York Times magazine reported that millions of Americans are dealing with stress, anxiety, and fatigue that is directly related to the uncertainty that we are facing with COVID-19. My brothers and my sisters, this article goes on to reveal that we're not just dealing with one pandemic crisis, but rather we are dealing with 5 pandemics at one time. We're confronting with a COVID pandemic that has infected over 6 million people globally and has even caused death to come among many thousands. Simultaneously, we're dealing with the pandemic of 40 million people who had to file for unemployment. While many are facing the loss of their jobs, we're also facing the pandemic of racial tension and social unrest, screaming loudly from our streets, no justice, no peace. And some are even screaming, Black Lives Matter. To add impact to injury, while all of these pandemics are working in syncopation, none can match the pandemic of living in a culture where truth is no longer truth. And lying within the culture has become the way of life. Someone once said, never empower people who won't accept responsibility. So today we are commencing you in the midst of 5 pandemics at one time. Donald Mack would say that we are at a theological turning point, that place of profound unease, where the tension between the present and the future, the already and the not yet, has become the reality for which we exist. And the question we must raise today is, what kind of ministry are we called to produce today in a pandemic and a post-pandemic world? What kind of leadership is required to guide a congregation of people, a community of faith, a people of God through a moment of crisis? Because it is true that our decisions make us, but it's a crisis that reveals us. It was Joe Frazier who said, you know the condition of a fighter when the lights come on. Well, the lights are on now. So what kind of preaching has to take place in the midst of a culture that believes that you can love Jesus and hate the church? What kind of ministry must go forth in a time where we have taken the blood of Jesus and turned it into Kool-Aid? What kind of ministry must happen in the midst of a people that can believe that you can live a life 10 miles wide and 1 inch deep, where anything goes and nothing really matters? What kind of leadership are you called to provide as we move into our future. You are a leader. You are a leader, and you were a leader when you arrived here. That's partly why we accepted you into this program. But we hope that your time has been enhanced to be a better leader. I had a lady who once asked me some years ago, why are you going to school to be a preacher? When the Lord called you, he qualified you. And I said, yes, you are partially right. I said, I'm not going to school to be a preacher. I was a preacher when I arrived here. I said, let me put it this way, the smokehouse don't make the ham. It just brings out the flavor. You have been here getting your flavor right. And now that your flavor is right, what kind of leadership are you going to provide as we move in this pandemic world? Well, while many things are changing, many things are really remaining the same. Isabel Wilkerson, in her book, Caste, The Origins of Discontentment, does a phenomenal job at describing America as an old house when she says wind, flood, drought, and human upheavals batter a structure that is already fighting whatever flaws were unattended to in the original foundation. When you live in an old house, you may not want to go in the basement after a storm to see what the rains wrought. Choose not to look. However, at your own peril, the owner of the old house knows whatever you are ignoring will never go away. Whatever is lurking will fester whether you choose to look or not. Ignorance is no protection from the consequences of protection of inaction. Whatever you're wishing away will gnaw at you until you gather the courage to face what you would rather not see. Can I tell you that you have come today to go with me and look into the basement of this house? First, in the basement of this house, you will find the mold and the mildew of racism that is reek with malice and hatred. And if we're going to be effective in a pandemic culture and a post-pandemic world, our ministry must make good on our investment of higher learning by dealing with the mold and the mildew of racism. I want you to know that all of us at some point in time will be impacted by this mold and this mildew of racism. I had a very real moment with this not too long ago. I was on the airplane. This was prior to the pandemic. And I was on the airplane and I was on my way to take my flight, and I was just about the last one to get on the plane. And you know they don't make planes as large as they used to make them. But I was about the last one to get on the plane, and as I walked on the plane, all the seats were about taken, and as I walked on, I could tell that some of those faces on the plane were saying, I hope that that big man don't have to sit beside me. And as I was walking, and there was that my seat was right beside a little white woman who was sitting there on the plane. And she got up hastily, and she got out the way, and then, don't you know, I got into my seat, and after I sat down and got settled, she sat down beside me, and then she pulled the arm of the chair down as if to say, don't touch me, and I don't want you, I won't touch you, and don't you touch me. And I had no interest of touching her anyway. Then she turned her little body opposite of me. And don't you know that she gave every indication, do not bother me on this flight. Well, I put my headphones on, and because I love to meditate and pray during flights anyway. And so as we got in the air We're taking off. We hit an air pocket. And I knew what was going on, you know, because when you're flying through the clouds, you're going to hit a few pockets. We hit an air pocket, and the plane dipped a little bit. And right when the plane dipped just a little bit and started rocking, the next thing I knew, that little white hand was on my knee. And I looked at her and I said, "Oh, now you want to touch me, right?" And she said, "Oh, sir," she said, "I'm sorry, I'm just a little nervous." I said, "Ma'am, just calm down." I said, "It's going to be okay." I said, "We just hit an air pocket." She said, "You sure?" I said, "We're going to be okay." And we started talking and we started sharing. And before long, she found out that I was a minister and I pastored a church and I shared and I worked at United Theological Seminary. And we went on. She found out that I authored books. I ended up giving her a book. What I'm trying to tell you is that before the plane dipped, there was an assumption that she made. And there was a moment in which she made a judgment about me because of who I was and what I represented, my skin color. And I felt every bit of that. But can I tell you that racism is still alive and doing well? But I want to say to you today that you have to be careful how you treat people in your takeoff, because you never know who you will need in your landing. Be careful how you treat people when you are in the ascendancy, because you never know who you will need coming down. W.E.B. Du Bois declared years ago that the problem of the 21st century is the problem of the color line. Racism today is America's original sin. It must be removed. We must remove the comfort of conversation to a place where the rigor of reality must be dealt with. We must take it from a place of the cognitive and put flesh on what racism looks like and what it does. Author Ta-Nehisi Coates, in an especially vivid passage of his book, Between the World and Me, says, "In all of our phrasing, race relations, racial chasms, racial justice, racial profiling, white privilege, white fragility, and even white supremacy, these words can get in the way and obscure what racism does. Racism is so vicious that it can leave us with visceral and cracked skulls like that of John Lewis. Racism dislodges brains and block airways and rip muscles and extract organs, crack bones and break teeth. If that's not enough, it will even put a knee on a man's neck like George Floyd and shoot bullets through a Breonna Taylor while she's in an apartment complex. Your ministry must be dedicated to eradicating racism and never letting words keep you from dealing with the results of racism. And if you're going to be prophetic in the 21st century, we must deal with what William Smith says in his approach to prophetic preaching. When he says, preach with balm and balm. In other words, there are times when we must drop bombs, B-O-M-B-S, on matters of sin, but have enough love and forgiveness in our hearts to apply balm, B-A-L-M, on the same matter, with the intent of healing and making better. In addressing this matter, Dr. Bill Jones says that a flute won't suffice where a trumpet is expected. And the late Charles Booth says that preaching has been the dominant force for liberation. And this tradition has essentially been evangelical in scope and nature. What I'm trying to tell you is that if we're going to deal with racism, it starts with dismantling that in our churches, in our pulpits, in our ministries, in our Sunday school classes, at the coffee cafe, at dinner parties, at social media sites. Tearing down racism doesn't start with a march, but it starts within you. we must tear it down. Consider what else is in this basement. We must deal with the plaster of the poor and the poverty in this basement. In the United States of America, there are 140 million poor and low-income people, which means that almost 50% of America is living in poverty. 62 million people work every day 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. 38 million children in America are in the poor class and go to bed hungry every night. Some of the debris of this pandemic has left behind 114 million Americans that are underinsured or have no insurance at all. And millions, while you're graduating, are being evicted from their homes. But the real poverty of America is not limited to economics, but it has more to do with morality and the impoverishment of the soul. While your ministry must address at some level the economic poverty that is around your ministry, you're also called to preach to a soul that has become numb to 190,000 people dead from a virus and still refuse to wear a mask for my sake. You have been called to minister to a soul that is unmoved by children being placed in cages, ripped out of the arms of mothers with a child crying that emergency cry that only a mother knows. You're called to serve an impoverished soul that says, I have mine and now you got to get yours. I want you to know that one thing that this coronavirus has done for all of us, it reminds all of us of how fragile life is. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. tells of a time when he went over to Bombay, Delhi, India. Dr. King said that the movement at that time had spread it beyond America and it went global. Then he says that he had a desire to go to India to be with Gandhi and the place where Gandhi was and to study that culture. When he got over there, he wanted to go to a little place in Trivandrum. And there was a little small village there where a group of people were considered to be the poorest people in the land. And they were known as the untouchables. When the leader of the tribe introduced Dr. King, he said, "Dear fellow untouchables, I present to you another untouchable from America." Dr. King said that initially he was floored that he would be referred to as an untouchable because he had graduated from one of the most prestigious colleges in the world, the Morehouse College, because he had gone on to study in seminary, because he had flown from one continent to another and even had dinner with the prime minister. He did not want to be referred to as an untouchable. But then he had an enlightenment. It hit him that yes, that's what he was. He was an untouchable. He was an untouchable because he represented 20 million in America at that time who was smothering in the airtight cage of poverty. Poor people quarantined in isolated ghettos, black folk who were exiled in their own country. It was then that Dr. King realized that yes, he too was an untouchable. What I'm trying to tell you is that this virus has made all of us untouchables. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, whether you have a degree or not, we are all untouchables. And don't you know that it was here that Dr. King's words were uttered, that what directly affects some of us indirectly affects all of us. And what I am trying to tell you is that it doesn't matter how far you get in this life. Never disconnect yourself from those who may be struggling financially and those who may be struggling economically, because we are all connected to them in the process. Augustine said that grace is no more than snow that is covered by manure. And there are two things you need to understand about that. One, that when snow covers manure, you need to understand that you can't see it and you can't smell it. And there are some things in my life and in your life that the grace of God has kept us from that you can't see. And there are some things in my life that you can't tell where I've been. I'm so happy and so thankful about that you can't tell the places I've been and what I've been through. And there's some things on my life you can't even smell. I'm so glad that His grace covers me, even as an untouchable. His grace keeps us. And so now, as you graduate with a degree, don't ever think yourself to be more highly than you ought. Never lose touch with the common person with your degree. But God has elevated you to be able to reach back and help somebody else. And lest I keep you too long, in the words of Gandhi, poverty is the worst form of violence. It is the mother of all crimes. Therefore, we're going to get the foundation straight in the basement of this house. We must also deal with the cracks in the mortar where violence and cynicism has merged through. Violence has always been a part of the American culture and the culture of ministry and global culture. Look at this. If you're going to follow Him, you got to deal with some violence. Paul was beheaded under the Emperor Nero. Peter was crucified upside down so that they wouldn't confuse his crucifixion with that of Christ. Andrew went to the land of man-eaters. Now that we know as the Soviet Union, where he was crucified. Thomas was pierced with spears of 4 soldiers. Philip possibly had a powerful ministry over there in North Africa. He was arrested and cruelly put to death. Matthew, some say, was not martyred, while others say that he was stabbed to death there somewhere around Ethiopia. James, the Jewish historian Josephus, reported that he was stoned and then clubbed to death. Philip arrested and cruelly put to death. Simon the Zealot was killed for refusing to sacrifice to the Son of God. Matthias the apostle was put to death and burned. John, the only one of the apostles, some think that he just died of natural death. Some say that he died near Rome that involved boiling oil. And then Bartholomew, we don't know how he died, but we know he died, okay? Now, this is not to suggest that this kind of martyrdom will befall you as such, but the evil that sought to take their life for the gospel's sake is still operative today. However, violence shows up today not only through swords and shields and guns and knives, but also through the words that we use, the rhetoric, the language, the expression, our hermeneutics, our homiletics, our theology, our biblical interpretations for today's culture. It is possible to preach truth to power without preaching hate. Separatism and bifurcation and making people feel worse when they leave than when they arrived. It is possible to teach correction without introducing harm. It is possible to produce ministry of change and opportunity without demeaning character and the possibility of hope. The violence that is showing up in political hate speeches, cars running over people and shooting innocent protesters, rioters looting, burning down buildings. We must, as ministers of the gospel, stand with a word from the Lord. Ahmaud Arbery been shot running through a community. We are breeding cynicism and a culture of violence when video games are being sold to our children like Call of Duty, where they're actually practicing target shooting. We're called to address these matters that shape consciousness and character. Can I tell you that your D-Min degree means more than just a degree? You got to leave here and make a difference. If you don't mind, for just a few moments, I want to tell you what my degree was all about. I graduated in 1997, and my study centered around juvenile delinquents in the African American community and reconciliation empowerment for the church. And I had to reach out to African American juvenile delinquents and involve them with the church, not knowing that that program was a seed for a larger program that is still operative today. When I did that program at the New Hope Granville Baptist Church in Oxford, North Carolina, I didn't know that that was training ground for a national program that we do now called the Corner to Corner Street Life and Drug Dealers Conference. But for some 16 years now, we have been able to reach out to drug dealers, street life people, and bring them into church for 3 days and talk to them about giving up the sale of drugs and going back to school and reconnecting with their families and reconnecting with their children. I never forget the first time we had this conference, there were so many people who said that we could never do it. But for 3 days, at the opening of the conference, we had 147 drug dealers sitting in church for 3 days. And don't you know that after 3 days, we talked to them about making changes in their life. We had a graduation ceremony just like you're going through right now, because some of them never graduated from anything in their life. And so we wanted them to know that if you sat in church for 3 days, we wanted to graduate you to something great. And so we had them to come into the church, and we put caps and gowns on them and marched them down the aisle. And don't you know that after preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, we opened the doors of the church, and out of 147 drug dealers, 42 of them dropped crack and picked up Christ. Somebody ought to shout hallelujah. Somebody ought to shout glory. If that was your child, if that was your son, if that was your daughter, you'll be praising God right now. I said 42 of them dropped crack and picked up Christ. But that program started at United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, with a little program that just started with juvenile delinquents. What I'm trying to tell you is that whatever project that you have been working on, whatever degree you have been working on, do not take it for granted. Go back and leave and do something with all of the work that you have produced, because God has greater plans for you. We are so proud of you. We are so excited about your future. We are so ecstatic about what God is going to do with what you have. Please remember us, support us in the future, and know that United Theological Seminary is always here for you. Now unto him who's able to keep us from falling, to present us faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. Now unto him, to the only wise God, our Savior, be glory, majesty, dominion, and power, now henceforth and forevermore. Let the Redeemer of the Lord together say, amen. God bless you.
Hello. First of all, we want to thank you so much for your generous support so that we can continue to operate in excellence. The following are ways to give tithes and offerings using technology. Use the Push Pay app or go to Giving page on the Union Baptist website. Use the Cash app, which is $UBC 1200 Trade. Use the Givelify app, Union Baptist Church, Winston-Salem. For Rise Up giving, please use the designated Cash app, Union Baptist Rise Up. If you don't use technology for giving, you may bring your tithes, offering, and Rise Up campaign payments on Sundays from 10 a.m. till noon. Envelopes will be available. Or you can mail checks only. No cash, only checks to 1200 North Trade Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27101. Stay engaged. Join us for our weekly Zoom Connect programs. Each day, there is a way for you to engage with your Union Baptist Church family. Mondays, join Coffee and Connect Bible Study. Tuesdays, it's Men's and Women's Fellowship. Connect with your brothers and sisters for topical discussion on relevant issues. Wednesdays, it's all about the youth, beginning at 7:30 p.m. Special Zoom sessions for nursery through high school. Thursdays, it's Breaking Bread with Bishop Mack, a Bible study addressing timely challenges from a biblical perspective. Thursdays at 8:30 p.m., it's Kaya, the networking and empowerment session for all young adults and young professionals. Fridays, get moving with Lady Kim on Fitness Friday. The exercise video can be viewed on the Union Baptist website or Facebook page any time of the day, beginning at 6:30 a.m. On the weekends, connect with Saturday Phone Line Worship, Saturday C2C Remix Motivational Services, Saturday Connect Worship Services, Sunday School Phone Line, Sunday Worship Services Phone Line, and online. Don't forget to call in each Saturday for our church chat with Bishop at 7 p.m. These calls are important for information about the ministry. Please visit the website for dates, times, and Zoom ID numbers for all these Connect services. And don't forget to stay safe. Wash those hands frequently. Avoid large crowds over the size of 10. Cover coughs and sneezes. Stay at home when you're sick. Don't hoard the food. The supply chain is fine right now. Have a blessed week.